when you pull on that jersey, you represent yourself and your teammates. And a name on the front is a hell of a lot more important than the one on the back. Get that through your head.
And here we go.
And it is no good. He missed it. Are you kidding me? The season can't end like that.
The playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Some goofball in a hat and a red shirt. Now he takes off the shirt. He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs to the 50. He runs to the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms. Bare-chested. Somebody stop that man.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Tuesday evening. Welcome to another edition of the program. I'm Tyler FALK. Welcome to NETMA here on this Tuesday evening. A lot of stuff to get to. A lot of good games this past week in Week 5 here on Saturday and last night over on Monday. Let's go just jump right into it, shall we? Got 8 games to cover, 11 games here in Week 6 coming up. But, of course, you're all here to figure out, what'd you miss in Week 5. So let's go ahead and start out with the first game that took place over on Saturday evening, that being Louisiana and Atlanta, and 7 under par is how I'm summarizing it. 7 field goals for Otis Boudreau for the Revolution. 21 points scored on the leg of kicker Boudreau, and I said it in the locker room after the ball game is, do I need to start caddying for you because you're hitting all these like they're chip shots? It's pretty much money. Every kick was money from Boudreau. Offense put him in really good positions to score pretty much the points that would carry us to victory, and so Boudreau got player of the game. Much deserved win. 5 total turnovers for Louisiana's defense. They have the 2 best defensive backs in terms of interceptions now on the roster in Tank Bennett and Mike Ryan with 7 apiece. That backfield had Rolman Hood getting a couple interceptions, got one over on Saturday as well. But the Revolution defense, don't throw it to them. Though Atlanta did find a couple of nice passes over the middle. Way too much information. Coach won't be too happy with me about that. But we've said Atlanta's off. We've known that Atlanta's off. And for Atlanta, I'm not sure they're a shoo-in now for even a division title at this point. Right now, Atlanta, with a loss to St. Louis, a loss to the Rebs, they're looking, behind the 8 ball. This was their only chance to beat the Revolution. And so if these two teams tie up atop the table for the division, Louisiana gets the division title, gets a top 6 seed, and Atlanta's, stuck for a wild card spot. Not a good situation for the Swarm. They need to figure out their offense in a hurry and start getting the ball into their own hands instead of firing it to opposing defenders. A very common theme this week is if you won the turnover battle, you more than likely won the football game. I think I only saw maybe one football game that ended up in a turnover battle, maybe not being a too much of a factor for either side, but definitely in this football game, 5 total turnovers, 4 interceptions, 1 fumble for the Swarm leads to their doom. Moving on to Lone Star in Houston, and I'm on the bandwagon for Lone Star. The Glory have had to come back in that one. 22 points in the fourth quarter to make a stellar comeback down inside of 5 minutes, almost reminiscent of Queen City in Fort Worth. Houston just could not put away the dangerous offense, could not keep that offense off the field in the final minutes when it mattered the most. And the glory can do that to you. Kudos to Fennick and company. Fennick with nearly 300 yards, two touchdowns, one intercept. McBride had a solid day picking up a touchdown as well. It all came down to maybe a couple timely turnovers as well from there we go. Gunny gets on the act with a turnover, and so as well as Jay Mart as well. Lone Star, I'm on the bandwagon for them. Houston, this is where they're at. They're just barely at the cusp. Maybe they'll make. Maybe they'll be one of the last teams into the playoffs, but right now sitting at 1-3, have some work to do. For Lone Star, definitely on the bandwagon for them. But if I'm getting on that bandwagon, it must mean I'm getting off of one bandwagon, and that's the Mexico City Aztecs. Wow. To use the quarterback's words against him, he threw a couple ducks. He threw 3 of them, and unfortunately for him, he completed one to Bill Henry, and Bill Henry fumbled away the football here in the football game. But you have to play perfect football against Baltimore if you're trying to pick up a revenge match, especially. But Baltimore controlled the clock, controlled the football, controlled the game from start to finish. What more can be said about Baltimore that hasn't already been said? Great offense, great defense. Mexico City with 17 points in that fourth quarter, maybe a little bit of garbage time there, but Baltimore not slowing down anytime soon. Makes me to believe, are they in for another championship ring? Because the way they're playing, I don't know if there's any team that can stop them. Even, might I say, DC. DC, though, playing extremely well on their bye week. They'll have another week to prepare for the Baltimore Vultures as well. Okay, moving on. Final game of the Saturday slate, that being St. Louis and Denver. It's a missed opportunity in more ways than one for St. Louis. A missed field goal, couple of turnovers near or inside Denver's red zone. Not a clean game from Christian Brown. Cairo Martinez had a solid day on the ground, but it wasn't enough. The passing attack for Denver has been the story of their season, and Denver has been absolutely phenomenal when it comes to the passing attack this season. Another close to 300-yard passing game for Eric Price. O'Shaughnessy's found more ways to run in the passing attack, maybe on a couple of swing and screen passes. Defense for Denver played extremely well. Kindler and Fuentes came up with those 2 timely interceptions. But for St. Louis, if they don't find a way, they had a chance to take the outright division lead. That missed field goal and those turnovers, big missed opportunity for the Gladiators. All right, on to Valentine's Day slate. We start with London and Fort Worth. Someone's always got to go, and London was calling, and they finally picked up the phone. They finally get on the board with their first win. A solid opening half. Just had to close it out in the second half, and they did just that. This was the game that I'm talking about where the turnover battle didn't really matter too much. Both teams had 1 turnover. Reno with an intercept, Pickler with an intercept. Pickler was fairly clean in the pocket for the majority part of this game, was not sacked at all, and that's what led to Pickler being able to throw with plenty of time and space. And meanwhile, they were getting to Reno a couple times. Reno was sacked for 2 times, and that's ultimately probably the deciding factor is a solid defensive game plan for London and a little bit more of a balanced rushing attack from London. 91 yards all told for Robert Mayo. The running game finally picked up and finally got going. I'd love to see more of that from Robert Merrill and company. A much more dynamic offense, which led to this victory. London will be very happy. Hopefully they continue out that and maybe make a late charge for the playoffs here as they approach the midway point of the season. Okay, moving on. Carolina, Jacksonville, the only overtime ball game. And whew, I was talking to Cam after that ball game, and he was breathing a sigh of relief that it didn't happen again. Jacksonville got their kicking unit on at the end of that football game, and Jacksonville were able to kick home the field goal. Bradshaw gets on, and to the chagrin of Carolina, but to the relief of probably the rest of the league, including Jacksonville, Bradshaw kicks home a field goal after Dunhill leads a impressive, yet another comeback drive, a late fourth quarter drive for Marcus Dunhill, which leads to them tying up the ball game and eventually winning it in overtime after a big interception by Greg Gaines inside field goal range in overtime to begin the overtime period. And Jacksonville uh, come away with a crucial victory. That'll move them to 3-1, if memory serves me correctly. A good solid start for Jacksonville after a disappointing season in season 17. Good on the Kings. Carolina unlucky again, 2-3 as they go into their bye week. No, they got one more game. My apologies. Here in week 6. Okay, moving on. Last two games, Tulsa and Sioux Falls. The Desperados. Unfortunately, for this ball game, these were two up-and-coming teams after having disappointing seasons for the last couple of seasons. Sioux Falls, they're right on track to come back and get right back to where they were in season 15, maybe even going back to the championship. I think they're right on track to maybe make it back to the postseason if they can continue to win close ball games, kind of like this one. The defense, this for both clubs, played phenomenally in that first quarter. Both teams coming up with big safeties in the third quarter, but eventually Sioux Falls were just able to extend the lead just a little bit more than Tulsa, and Sioux Falls come away with that victory. Another solid passing performance from Julian Tyree. GP Wells gets going, 2 rushing touchdowns. From London and Sioux Falls, both teams tried to go to the end of the spectrum the last 2 seasons. Now they're starting to come back more toward a balanced attack, and both teams are finding success. They have the mentality to do it. They have the coaches to do it. Now they're finally showing up when it matters most. Finally, especially in the nitty-gritty part of this middle of the season, they have finally shown what their potential can be. London only with 1 win. They need to continue winning football games in must-win scenarios. For Sioux Falls, what more can be said about the Sparrows? They have now demonstrated that beating Louisiana, now having a couple of solid games, taking down Tulsa, 2 up-and-coming teams. Sioux Falls right on track maybe to make the playoffs here in season 18. Final game, both first planes. I was joking. I was half joking Wednesday over on the power rankings when I said, wouldn't it be awesome if I called both first planes? And I get to the broadcast meeting and Mike Deggs reveals the schedule. I'm looking at it. I'm like, neat. I get Portland, San Diego. After I maybe moniker the term over on season 16, one of the early episodes in NETMA, where I moniker this game as both first planes, while being over in San Diego. But being able to call that football game, it lived up to the hype. When I was maybe expecting I was expecting maybe a lot of points. Jack State had it projected around 49, 50. I was expecting them to get 50 points in the first half. That game just it went off like a cannon. That game was absolutely amazing from start to finish. Both offenses played well. San Diego's defense came up late in the football game, forcing a couple of plays. Zach Lay gets the first all-time pick 6 for the Maverick defense in franchise history. San Diego, oh boy, and I mentioned it on air, but the correlation is just uncanny. 4 passing touchdowns for Scar Patterson. He has passed for 4 touchdowns in all 3 of San Diego's victories. And in each of those games, 2 of those touchdown passes have gone to Gunnar Lewis. Gunnar Lewis looks like a completely different beast here in a San Diego Maverick uniform. For Portland, sound the alarm. 0-5 for a team that was pushing for a playoff spot in season 17. It's not looking good at all for Portland. San Diego, definitely a playoff contender. Definitely maybe a 8 or 7 seed coming into the playoffs. They face Charleston here in week 6, and that's a must-watch game. Two teams looking for playoffs. 2 teams going to fight it out tooth and nail in that football game. I think a tough defense like Charleston for San Diego to play against. Will be a good, tough test here in the middle part of the season for San Diego. So let's take a look at where everybody stands according to according to our picks. The SFL community had a solid day, 5-3 on pick'ems. That moves them to 27-25 overall. I didn't fare as much. I had a completely 500 week, 4-4 after Saturday's slate. Only netted me one correct pick, a couple of close picks, but not anything official to go above the spread. A lot of teams covered the spread. Good on them. But my record goes down to 29-3, only 2 wins ahead of the SFL community. So things get tighter in that part. But that's going to do it for today's episode. Tomorrow, we're going to touch on some more power rankings, my top 10, and the full list will be released again tomorrow. So go ahead and tune in tomorrow, same time, same place, right here on NETMA YouTube. And, we'll catch you later. We'll see you tomorrow. And until then, good morning, good afternoon, and good night.